Hi, for this edition of Direct Input, we're going to look all about the financial side of things. So, in the last one, we did law, which was really, really eye-opening, and we got some really, really great advice about how to kind of stay legally minded and make decisions and put stuff in place which is going to protect you with your career as you go forward. It's always better to kind of think ahead rather than try to correct things later on because it'll be 10 times more difficult. So for this one, we're looking at the financial side of things, which can seem intimidating, a bit of a minefield. So we've got Lewis Robinson from Jon Child Co, which is a Manchester-based accountancy firm that work with lots of different musicians and companies in the industry from the local area as well and further afield as well. So I'll bring Lewis in now. Hi, Lewis. How are you doing?
Hello, evening, everyone. You okay?
So first off, do you want to tell us a bit about you, like what it is that you do, and like a bit about Jon Child as well, and the type of people that you work with, and how that kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So as you can assume, I'm an accountant, and I've done numerous different accountancy positions, but based in the music industry now for about 8 years, and since being at Jon Child, what we really focus on is finding artists who need help, like this video, at the right time, really. You know, it's all good getting major artists, but being able to find one that's developing and coming through and needs advice. That's what we really aim to do and strive for. And I think we're getting there and really good at achieving that. Yeah, so that's what I do. We look at affairs such as VAT, income tax, corporation tax, the boring admin side. None of us like doing. Everything we can help, really, with.
So do you, like you said there, like finding artists and bands, musicians at like an early level, so not just when there's like loads and loads of money coming in, loads of money going out, loads of money coming in, but also those bands and artists that are just kind of emerging,
Yeah.
that have got stuff happening, that you're finding kind of early on to help them kind of shape that side of things as well. We talk a lot about making sure that we're exploiting all of the different revenue streams, like so that artists have got all of that money coming in. And if they're not managing it, I guess, on that side of things, then that can get quite tricky as well. So before things do get serious with a band or an artist, and they are like signing deals with advances and paying for all different services, and they've got lots of tour money coming in, and maybe they're at a level where they're starting to get paid to do gigs, get some streaming income coming through. They might be like, oh shoot, do we need to pay a PR for this single? That kind of level of artists. Like what should they be doing at that stage, do you think, to kind of like to start thinking about like how to protect themselves and in that side of things?
Yeah, so the first thing I would always do is try and advise people, separate your business from your personal life. I often see clients who we take on might have one bank account and they've got the personal life running through it, but then royalties, live income, vans, gear, everything going on, and it can overface you quite soon and quite quickly.
Yeah.
I would first of all separate it out. You focus on personal life at one point, and then when you're working, you look after your business.
Yeah.
You need to keep on top of things. Unfortunately, again, with the boring admin side, it has to be done. You have to keep on top of it to prevent it catching up to you. If you're able to do that, then you will find it a much easier time, and you'll be able to focus on your art, the music behind what you do. Yeah.
So when you're saying keep on top of things, it like keeping a record of stuff that's going out, that's coming in. Like, are we talking spreadsheets? Some people love a spreadsheet. I do. Like, I know that I don't use Excel to its full potential because it's that thing where you just long-windedly put a load of stuff in and then someone goes, why don't you just do that? And then presses a shortcut. But like, those spreadsheets aren't for everybody. Is that the best way of keeping track, do you reckon?
Yeah, if you are able to separate your bank accounts, you can download your bank into a spreadsheet, and that could be your base. You can see things coming in, things going out, and you can base your business from that. With the electronic systems we have now, Dropbox, WeTransfer, you can store everything digitally,
Yeah.
and you can tie in those. So if you have a Dropbox, make a folder for 2022. Within that, put expenses, put income. Every time you create something such as a sales invoice, stick it in there, and then forget about it until you need to address it. Every time you get an invoice in, stick it in there until you need to address it. It's a sort of management system within itself, which should help you keep track and organize. The old shoebox in the corner of your bedroom, that doesn't need to happen anymore. We can scan it, and as long as it's good quality, then it's acceptable.
So you just say set up a bit, so make sure that you've got a bank account that's separate from your personal accounts. Before you've maybe set up as a business, would just getting a Monzo or a
Seen it
Revolut
done.
or something
Something purely online based if that's what is needed. Just something separate for you will help you separate your personal life from your business life.
So setting up a separate bank account, and then everything that's kind of coming out or going in, that you're keeping a record of that, maybe on a spreadsheet, and then you've got a folder that's just full of receipts, invoices, all of those things, I guess clearly labeled.
Yeah, well, not always, but yeah, clearly labeled.
Ideally.
That's it, and it's hard to say sometimes because everyone is different. Some people like things laid out differently to others, but you need to do what feels right for you. But organisation from the start, you can't go wrong.
Just getting into a habit, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Unfortunately.
One of our artists asked a question: are there any accountancy or finance apps you would recommend for your bookkeeping?
Yes. So one of my personal favourites is called Xero. It is a bit more expensive than the others, but I find it gives a great functionality. But a good beginner one might be QuickBooks. You've probably seen the adverts that are floating around. What they allow you to do is when you're building your business from your bank account, from your bank statements, you can attach files. You can have everything in one place.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to push because it's a cloud software. Then if you can imagine, you would have your bank, which filters into income and your expenses, but the backup is already there.
That's
now, yeah, I know QuickBooks and Xero also come with phone apps, so it allows you to take a photo of your receipt. And I think as a up and coming artist, you'll get a discount. As a new person, if you were to start with Xero, with QuickBooks, you will get an introductory discount. Try it. If you don't like it, try a different one.
I guess as well with those apps, if you're taking photos of receipts, if you're on tour, and then you can just do stuff in the moment, like when you're at a service station or something, or
absolutely. In the car, take a photo, get it done, then forget about it.
Yeah, super handy. For the artists and bands that are just starting to send invoices, to maybe it's a local promoters, or even they're starting to get paid basically from one thing or another. Is there anything that they need to take into account when they're doing that, from the off?
What I would say, and what I see a lot of, is people using Word for invoices. Microsoft Word, I'd recommend against that. I would use Excel because it has the functionality to check your numbers you're putting in, add things, subtract things. If you build an invoice in Word and you manually add something up, if there's a mistake, you will be paid wrong.
Yeah. So
if
it's
you
a
set up a template, set up a template in Excel and just base a basic invoice from that and have it calculate it for you. So then you will get paid for the work you have done. If you were expecting £1,000, but you've sent it by mistake as 900, they pay you 900. you won't discover the missing £100 for a few weeks or 3 months down the line. And then it's hard to get it off them, So I would say, your name and address at the top of an Excel sheet, details and amount, and then not forgetting your bank details at the bottom.
How many invoices I've had over the years where people have actually not put their bank details is incredible. Like, it's just like, that's the key bit, isn't it? You want to get paid, make sure that you've got those bank details in the bottom.
Exactly.
What about reference numbers and stuff like that?
That's up to you. Again, you could have your initials of your name, the year, and a number, or you could just have a rolling number. For the person receiving it, it doesn't matter too much. It's more for your own bookkeeping. If you want to keep track of invoices through a numeric-based system like that, you can do it. It's whatever works for you. Again, like I said prior.
Cool. I know for us as a venue, like when we're getting invoices through for bands, or even just for the different things that we do, is just like what's in that description, like what the service is that you're actually saying, that you need paying for is super important. Not every company will need a reference number or like something to account it to that, but they'll need the right thing in their description so that they can kind of put it to the right department. So that's something that's always useful for us, without a doubt.
You can't go wrong. Put your name on it. Put where the service was provided, which club, which venue you were working at. Put what job you were doing, your sound engineer, lighting, something like that, and then put your amount. Break it down for them, and then there's less chance they'll query and hold up the payment.
Mm-hmm. Have you got any advice for people who are chasing a payment from somebody that they've done some work for, and it's it's a little bit late?
Be nice is generally if you're a keyboard warrior or not nice, chances are they won't help you, even if they've just maybe it's fell through the net, maybe they've forgotten about it. If you're dead nice, they'll come back nice and say, look, hold my hands up, let's get it started. Just be nice. People make mistakes. If they are still not budging and there are issues, chances are you were introduced to that person from someone. See if they can assist you.
Yeah.
If you've got a gig at a venue you've never done before, chances are they've heard about you from someone else. See if they can assist. And on payment terms for invoices, generally I like to say like a week. So I would recommend send your invoice on a Sunday or a Monday, because then there's a high chance you'll get it by Friday. If you send it towards the end of the week, they might push it back and then you'll have no money for the weekend.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, that's spot on for Future Yard as well. If people get their invoices in before end of play on a Monday, they get paid on the Friday.
There you go. You see,
that's how it works. What about you? I see a lot of people put in like government legislation and stuff on the bottom of an invoice where you can like charge late fees and stuff like that. Is there I always hear different things on this.
Yeah.
Is it real?
There are guidelines like that. Trying to enforce it is a bit of a minefield. The view I've always took, and I have seen it on small artists, big artists, engineers, for example, who've worked with an artist for 20 years, they've put it on. I've always took the view that if you're keen to get more work, if you're keen to work with the artist again, I wouldn't start putting legal threats at the bottom of it, charging interest, because it's not the view you want to give, the vibe you want to give to who you're working with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I guess in this industry where particularly if it is like, crew with artists, and the whole idea is like harmony on tour,
exactly.
That whole feeling of like working together. Then if you're putting your invoice in and it's got like legal threats on it, it doesn't really match the kind of like vibe of the working environment, does it, that you're trying to create?
That's it. And I mean, the majority of artists you'll find yourself working for at the start, they won't have pots of money, and generally get paid after the show. So if they get paid a week after the gig you've worked on, if you're asking for money before that, they might not have it. So if you start then asking for interest in this, it doesn't put you in a great light, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
When one of the big things that we get asked a lot is when artists and bands are like establishing themselves, like when they've kind of decided, right, this is real, this is something that's happening. Money's coming in, money's coming out, but it's not just a hobby anymore. Like people are wanting to pay us money to do this stuff, and they're thinking we need to set up as a business and make this official. At what point do you think that a band or an artist needs to do that?
When they get that oh my god moment, it's like really happening.
So it is that feeling of, right, this is, we need to make this serious.
Again, it's hard to say. It comes down to your artist. I would say if I was in that position, when you start feeling like it is getting too much, which for some people might be a lot later than others, that's when you need to inquire with someone. Have a quick chat with an accountant, you know. They'll never charge you for coming in and just saying hello and asking for a bit of advice. And from that, you'll then know whether you need them or not.
Yeah.
What I would recommend in our industry is very, very specialized. Whoever you go with is fine, but I would always say find someone with a music background.
Yeah.
You know, just because they might think of something that a backstreet accountant might not do.
Mm-hmm.
What I've found is when people need accountants, they're scared of the fees as well.
Yeah.
Which is expensive. Lawyers, expensive. Managers, they're expensive. So look for someone who, for example, we give a quote, but we charge for the time that you use us for. If someone gives you a fixed fee, I would expect, well, if you start reaching that, they might start lowering the quality of the work or might move on to different artists. If you can find someone who charges by the hour, will work with you, tell you send it to us, it'll take us less time, we won't have to charge you as much. You know, I find that's a lot fairer, and then you can see sort of what expense you're racking up. If you're contacting your accountant every day, it's going to be more expensive than once a year. You know, but I think the main thing is when you feel it is getting too much, that's when to find some help and go to a few different people. Make sure you feel comfortable with the person that will be working with your finances, because it's a very personal thing. Even though it's your business, it's a very personal thing to open up to someone and say, look, I am struggling this month, or I need help with this.
Yeah.
So it's important that you find the right person.
Yeah, definitely. I think I mean, it just feels very in tune with what we've talked about during this like program, is that, you know, the element of trust, and that these are serious areas of like people's careers, people's lives, and it feels like sometimes we jump in really, really quickly with people, even if we're feeling the ick a little bit as well, and it's just like, well, they're working with this person, so they must be fine, but there's something that's not quite right. And it does feel like sometimes people do jump the gun a little bit with those relationships. So it's really good that you're saying speak to a few and see what you get, see what the vibe is, see who's charging for the actual work that they're doing is a really, really cool one as well. I'd not really anticipated that one.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess that comes into as well is just like, you know, if you've been looking after your finances by keeping those records of what you've been spending, what's coming in, what's coming out, then it means that it is going to take you less time, and that it's going to cost a little bit less money, doesn't it?
It could cost a lot less, you know. If I was to ask for a set of information from an artist, and I basically from that I'm pulling your business to, you know, bringing your business to its year end, income, expenses, assets, liabilities, all that. If I don't have to go through all your personal expenses, you know, if you've been to McDonald's during the day, Costa, all these different types of things, it saves my time, and therefore we don't charge as much.
Yeah.
Which is good for you. If you were to say, here is my business account, everything on there is business. Could be McDonald's if you're away from home, could be Costa if you're away from home. But then we don't have to question it. We don't need to ask, what was this? What was this? And that's what it's about. You don't want to be an up and coming artist trying to hold on to your money, which, you know, you have to do because it's hard to start off. and then having to fork out a fortune for some advice.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things I just want to pick up on something that you said there around expenses and questioning expenses. So do you think when artists are doing those logs of kind of like what's coming in and what's coming out, do they need to detail what the reason is for those kind of expenditures? Does that make your life easier, or is that too much information?
Yeah, it depends on what level of service you're giving a client. If you've done gigs all year, some small gigs, you've got some expenses, and you say, here is my expenses, my income, just do a tax return, that's fine. If you've got a large client who might have 10 people working for them, they're doing numerous different tours, they might want tour reporting, then I would ask, instead of me trying to figure it out, if you tell me it's for the UK tour, you tell me it's for the EU tour, again, it saves time. So it all depends on the level of service. I'm a big fan of just keep it simple, really. If you've got the backup to expenses, send me those. And if you want to put it in a quick Excel sheet, have a date, amount, any VAT, if you're VAT registered, and just the detail of what it is. That's fine. We don't want to overcomplicate these things.
Yeah, you don't want an essay to kind of read through in order to get to grips with what's going on.
And you don't want to have to prepare an essay.
I'm making notes for myself here as well, Lewis. This is well really, really handy. So that's, looking at when you need help, like when that kind of like keeping track of everything is getting too much, or it could be that maybe you are getting to kind of like a year end and you don't know what to do. Like, do you prefer if people like don't register themselves as like sole traders or businesses or anything, and they get that advice, they start that relationship with you lot as accountants, or like is that something that an artist or a band should be considering as well when they're kind of doing those stuff themselves too?
Yeah, I mean, if you're start working for yourself and you're self-employed, you will need to register yourself, or you should be registered. But it's fine if you're an approach accountant, if you're already registered, we can request authority to speak on your behalf. It takes about a week to set up. It's not a big thing. We can do it online. So if you think you need to register, go register. Better to register early than late, and then approach someone, or jump on the phone and say, look, I want to come and chat with you, but should I register first? People will help you where they can.
Yeah. Is it, I mean, obviously setting up as a self-employed is one thing. Have you got any advice to bands who are maybe kind of like, there's three, four, five, six of them in some instances? Like,
yeah, I mean, your usual offerings would be your one-man band, sole trader, group of people, partnership, and then you could have your limited company and your limited partnership. A lot of people will think that they need to go straight to the limiteds. Now, there used to be a lot of tax benefits. There's not so much anymore. And there's a lot of statutory requirements. There's a lot of filings that you have to do, a lot of reporting you have to do. Now, they're costly. If you're starting off with a couple of lads, a couple of girls, I would say make a little partnership, which is basically a group of self-employed people, a group of sole traders who agree to have this business, which is the band, and then split the profits. That's probably your best way. Keep it simple and then move into the statutory stuff.
So only get into that kind of limited company arena when you really, really need to, so that you don't have to do all of that kind of additional filing and additional.
Yeah, I mean, if a minimum limited set of accounts might be £1,000, plus these extras on there, your tax returns, you've got submissions to Companies House. If you're only making £10,000 a year, that's over 10% of your income gone.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just a partnership, an accountant might be able to quickly look at it and go, okay, a couple of £100 each or something. And you can really reduce the cost because there's not those filings.
Yeah. Wow.
When it comes to setting up a limited company, at the start of having a limited company, I would say it's more about protecting yourselves. If you're dealing with agents and bigger promoters, you contract for your limited company rather than yourself, so it protects you. You have insurance in the limited company to protect you. If it's a couple of years you're starting off, you're doing a few small gigs, I don't think you need that level yet.
Cool.
But
So
that's
it's when you start kind of bringing in like those booking agents, where I guess with a booking agent, because when you get paid for a tour or a gig or whatever, it goes through your booking agent as well. So if you're working with like businesses of that size, then having a limited company does give you that element of protection. Is that right?
Did you lose me then for a second?
I did, yeah. You froze for a second.
Sorry about that. What were you saying?
So yeah, when you're starting to work with firms that are operating on your behalf, I guess, and they're getting paid and then taking the commission and then paying you, that's at the kind of point where you should be thinking about upgrading from being a partnership to a limited company, like when a lot of money is changing hands. Oh, I've lost him again. Sorry, I lost you again then.
I don't think the internet likes that question.
So yeah, I was basically just summarizing, like, so stick at it as a partnership until you're working with those bigger companies that you're booking tours through and like consistently working with.
Exactly. And as soon as you start thinking, do I need to be a company? Ring up your local accountants, ring up someone who knows about that, just have a quick chat and just say, do you think I should? Can I come in and have a quick word with you? They won't pressure you into it because it's not right, it's not ethically correct. They will advise you and then say, how do you want to proceed? That's the best way to do it.
Cool. So say one of these bands rings you up, or one of these artists, and you're like going through like their setup, what they're up to, what is dream material for you on that handover, what makes it like as smooth and like easy for you?
I would say having the backup and again Excel's in place already that I can look at. Again, if you've separated it out from your personal life, I could look over it in 5-10 minutes and go, okay, this is what we should do, or this is what I would advise. And then I would sort of say, do you want to come in, have a chat? Let's talk through this income. Let's talk about your agent. The dream handover is having that already there, and we work on from it, having that set up ready. Now, I know sometimes it isn't going to be possible, in which case maybe when you take on a new client, you say, well, let me look over it and let me send queries. If you come back to me, then we can work through it. There's always a way. There's no ideal setup. Again, every band's different, every person's different. And what I've found is after working with so many different artists, that what might work with me and client A might not work with me and client B. It has to be tailored to each other. Everyone is different. And that's a good point to make. If you do get a manager, an agent, an accountant, make sure they're giving you what you want. If you need more or want more information rather than an annual set of accounts, tell them that, ask them that.
Do you find that there's like a bit of a reluctance for people to do that because they feel like they do just have to hand it over and then just go, right, okay, see you later, that's yours now? Do you feel that like is there artists and bands that you work with that have got like an active interest in like,
there is, and
how things are going, asking for advice on things? Is this the best way to do it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I found more of the up and coming artists now are taking more of an interest in the business side of being a musician. In the day, it's your livelihood, and it is a business. You have to look after it, nurture it, make sure it grows, and as you become bigger, it grows as well. It sometimes I can get an email or a call from someone who apologizes for calling you, apologizes for emailing, and it's like if you're sat up at night worrying about something, you need to email someone who can advise you. That's what people are there for.
Yeah.
Again, just go, if you're worried about something, contact someone and they'll help you.
Yeah. I get a lot of sorry to bother yous
all the time, and it's
I wanted to touch on one of those things, what you said just then as well, about every situation being different, and different artists and different bands requiring different things, because obviously everybody is different and everybody is attacking their career in their own way, and it is a lot of the time based on their own levels of knowledge as well about those different revenue streams. Like, are accountants well placed, do you think, that if an artist was to kind of go, look, this is what's going on and this is what's happening, that they could potentially see gaps where an artist or a band isn't collecting what they should be? Or is that
absolutely? Yeah. And I think that stems back to my point of, if you're going to get an accountant, try and get one with a music background, because it is a specialist topic. I often do take on new clients and I'll say, is everything fine? Yeah, everything's fine. I went, right, send me over statements from your agent, do this, do that. And you can see straight away, maybe I'm like, you haven't been paid for that one back then. Or there's something gone amiss with your royalties. They've dramatically dropped. And it might be that they're missing a tax form. You send that over and then they pay it all through.
Mm-hmm.
You can see trends that happen. So it would go back to the point, if you're going to get an accountant or a manager, so make sure they know the industry well.
Yeah, definitely. Gotcha. Is there anything that you see commonly missed? Is there something in particular that you see that artists and bands that you take on overlook? Is there a thread, or is it different for each?
Genuinely, people think about income and expenses. Whenever you think of the tax man and accountant, you say, have I got all my expenses in? I would sometimes lean to keep track of your assets as well. There's a lot more tax relief and deductions based around assets.
Okay.
If you're using a laptop and you take it to every gig and you're using it to play the music out of and stream stuff, and you're building songs on that, that's an asset. You can get a lot of tax relief for that. Often artists miss out on things like that. If you buy a new guitar, tell your accountant it is a piece of equipment. That side's always overlooked, and I'm always asking the question, just let me know, can I ask this? Have you bought this? In a year, I've spent £10,000 on just some wires. When you actually look into it, it's not just simple repairs and wiring, and it's bigger assets. And we need to be able to differentiate, like I say, because there's great benefits to the artists.
So how far do those assets go? So obviously, if you're using a laptop for performance and you're buying musical instruments, you're buying leads, all of those things, what else would be classed as an asset for an artist or a band's business?
The first thing you would review is it a substantial amount. If it's over £300-400, then we will start saying, right, is it an asset? Are you using it in the course of your business? Maybe if you had a £40-50 microphone, you're going to go through them every month. It's not so much. If you went out about a £500 one just for use in at home or a studio or something, then that's an asset. It's all about, you look at the amounts first involved and work from that. And that's generally how we can work it out.
Cool. So a cheap microphone in that way would be an expense, and then something substantial that is used over a long period of time, that would be classed as an asset.
Yeah, yeah. You're looking at like 3 to 4 years use. They say it's over a year, but genuinely in our business, for musicians, if you're buying something, it's not just going to be for a year. It's going to be for a couple of years.
I'd hope so.
Yeah, well,
I think you can make stuff last that long. I've got quite an interesting question here. Would you recommend artists, especially if they work towards sync and licensing, to set up a publishing entity? So, for example, for tax purposes, how would this work with potentially also having a limited company? That's quite a layered question.
yeah. Sync and licensing. So sort of licensing out your songs. So
Yeah.
I have dealt with sync requests in the past, and I'm guessing what you mean by a publishing entity would be a limited company, just to separate out your sync income. I would look at the amounts involved. Again, it's expensive to have a separate entity. If you've only got a couple of thousand going through, it might cost a couple of thousand to maintain.
Yeah.
If you're dealing in higher amounts, tens of thousands of pounds, it might be beneficial to protect yourself and have rights. Again, I think it comes down to amounts involved for that. I have dealt with big companies, big artists who have up to 8 companies, and they will separate out publishing in one, recording in another, UK live, foreign live. But you're talking large income streams.
Yeah.
If you're just starting off, you don't want to be getting bogged down with too many entities.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's basically, if it gets to a point where it's really necessary, isn't it? It's not something that would be desirable to do at this stage, but like there could become a need like later on, if that's making a lot of money, then to do that kind of
absolutely
setup.
Yeah,
because you see that more, like I guess like the kind of newer songwriters that are coming through over like the last kind of decade have got to a point where they're writing so much for other people that is such a big part of their career. So like more so than their artist projects, and they've got this, and they do set up a publishing entity to kind of protect that, but it's because it then turns into their main income stream.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That makes sense. One of the things that we touched on last week when we were talking about the legal side of stuff is the importance that particularly your lawyer or solicitor and your accountant are working independently from your other team members. Can you talk a little bit about that, like why that's so important, particularly from your view as an accountant when working with artists, that you're representing them and not like their manager as well, or their label as well?
That's exactly right. Yeah. At the end of the day, you answer to the artist. In a larger artist case, maybe 95% of the time you're dealing with the manager and 5% with the artist. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with the artist. The artist is the boss. If the manager asks you to do something and I'm thinking, I'm not too sure on that, I can't do it. It is the client is the artist at the end of the day. Any lawyer, agent, accountant should all say the same. The artist is at the front. And from that, if you were to give a power of attorney to your manager and say they're going to handle all my business, we would still take an approach that, well, if something doesn't look right, then we would still come to you.
Yeah.
You hear in the news all the time of troubles where an artist might have signed up to the manager's record label. They own the masters, and then there's an argument. You've put all your eggs in one basket there. You need to keep them completely separate.
Have you had any instances where a manager's tried to overrule like what an artist has wanted to do with their kind of like finances, or it feels like something that used to happen, but like we're getting into a bit more of a fairer industry where artists are a little bit more empowered and a bit more knowledgeable.
There's like nowadays the synergy between your manager and your artist. Your manager makes money if you make money, so they want you to do well, so they do well. So the first thing you'll know is obviously you appoint your own manager. If you don't like the person, you won't have them as a manager. If they're doing their job correctly, you'll see your income go up, and so will they. I don't think the way it used to work, I mean, going back 20, 30 years, I think the manager must have taken a back seat to the running of the day-to-day, just thought about the money, and hence when they would sometimes go against the artist's wishes, whereas now they're much more in line. Interest should be the same.
Yeah.
You know.
I hope so. I hope that's where we've headed.
Exactly. And a manager is a professional person. If I was to question something they've asked me to do and I say I need to check with the artist, well, then as a professional person, they should just take that on the chin and accept.
Yeah.
I'm doing my job, he's doing his job, or she's doing her job. We have to go back to the client at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything that puts you off working with a band or an artist?
I think there probably is, but I think I've been lucky and never had to face one of those issues. I think the industry we work in, if you get a team set up that you trust and that's reliable, there's honesty, then it'll work and you'll be successful. If maybe we were to take on a client who's trying to hide things, trying to do a few dodgy things, maybe then it might raise a few ethical flags, you know. But I've never had to deal with that, and hopefully I don't have to.
I think a lot of it comes down to that integrity, doesn't it? It's the people that you have around you. Like, you know, it's that kind of age-old, like, stereotype of like an old music industry that is, like we were saying before, like it's cutthroat and unfair. And it does feel like we are in a different situation now. And I don't know whether it's because maybe revenue streams have reduced quite drastically in the last 30 years, which always freaks me out saying that long, since the 90s. But like it does feel that, you know, that there's a lot of good people in this industry who will work very, very hard to build careers for people. So yeah, that's lovely that's kind of what you've encountered. I've got a question from Callum. What would you say is a sensible percentage or amount to give yourself for your personal life?
That's a good question. Not 100%. A good way, these thresholds, these different limits, they're always changing, just like the Chancellor changes every week. It's hard to keep track. If you're really starting off and we're not making much money, you might be below the tax threshold, which you don't have to worry. If you're doing quite well, 50, 60 grand, you're starting to move up, then we look at sort of 25, 30%, because you've got your 20% tax rate. But what you have to forget is you've got national insurance to pay as well. So that can sometimes take out quite a chunk. But your accountant should be able to advise on that, you know. It's normally sort of save 25, 30%, and then you can spend the rest.
Cool. Thank you. We've got a question just on that point before about the difference between assets and expenses. And I guess what Marta's asking here is like how we categorize the two different ones. So how we deal with that. So what is the difference between an asset and an expense, considering what we're talking about? Is it just what category you register it as?
So for me as an accountant, it just goes down to categories, and from that I know how to treat it. A good base is that an expense is something that you've spent money on during that year. You know, if you've bought a taxi this year, it's been used up in this year, that's it, it's finished. Whereas a laptop, if you spend £2,000 on a laptop, you're not going to just use it this year, you're going to use it this year, next year, maybe the year after. You're spreading the cost.
Yeah.
So this year, if you've got £10,000 of income, a £2,000 laptop. If you were to expense that in this year, next year you're not benefiting from that expense. It's sort of like that. It's to extend it.
Yeah.
It's complicated, but it is about sort of using it and expensing it over its useful life is the term that we use. And we look at it in years generally.
Yeah. So you're breaking down the cost between the years that it's gonna be in service for, kind of thing. So
exactly, and that comes back to the amount. If you're going to spend £1,000 on something like an item, you expect it to last longer than a year.
Yeah. So what happens if it breaks, or like you have to get a new one and you've spread it over a certain amount of years? Do you just put the costs into that final year?
You take it out of the accounts. So that's getting to the complicated side of the tax side of it. Yeah. From an accounting view of just your basic accounts, we would just take it out, bring in the new one, and then the process starts off again.
Okay, brilliant. I was just like, because I accidentally stood on my laptop during South by Southwest, so definitely like took it out of its kind of the lifespan that I was hoping that it would have. Awesome. Has anyone got any final questions before we wrap it up? I think we've got through so much stuff. That was great. That was really good. Is there anything else that you want to add, Lewis, that you think kind of like, these artists at this level, that it's useful for them to know that we might not have covered?
Again, if there is anything you need to ask, just approach someone, go and find help. I would advise against Googling complex matters, because you probably won't get it. Like if you're ill, don't Google it.
That's a really good comparison.
Yeah. Not your mates down the pub aren't always correct. If they tell you could do something necessarily you might not be able to, just go speak to someone.
Great.
And it's at any level. I look after sound engineers who might do a few gigs a year. That's fine. It's more about you're there if you need it.
Yeah. No, I think that's what I'm getting more and more, is that, it's really, really like vital that you have an accountant to help you with those kind of year end things, so that you don't, because the fines from HMRC are just ridiculously high as well, aren't they? Like,
yeah, you're talking a couple of £100 for missing it by a day. Yeah.
So it just makes sense to kind of not go into those situations without guidance, but knowing someone's there throughout the year just to kind of like ask those things and to say, am I on the right direction with this? This has come up. I've not encountered this before. It's just super invaluable. Like
that's it. Yeah. And I see it all the time where a client has been on tour, come home, open an envelope, and there's a letter there that makes no sense, and you start panicking. If you can take a photo of that and send it to your accountant, a quick 5-minute email back to them, and you're reassured.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
And that's what it's about. So I would always encourage anyone, if you've got questions, go and ask someone.
Don't keep it to yourself and get worried about it. I've got another question from Marta. If you're on a work trip, how do you know what food you can include as an expense or not?
That's variable. It depends. There's not so much limits, but I would always say no alcohol.
Yeah.
But it's reasonable to assume that you can have breakfast, lunch, dinner as an expense. Obviously, your expenses are going to lower your profits, going to lower the tax you have to pay, but then it is also coming out your pocket in the end because it's less money you've got in the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, no alcohol is generally the limit. Yeah.
Awesome. Right. Thank you so much, Lewis. That was awesome.
I hope I've helped a few people. If there is any other questions, fire them over. It's not a problem.
I wrote loads of notes then as well, which is always a good sign, or a bad sign for me, but like a good sign that we've got loads out of it. So we'll just wrap it up there if everybody's done. Yeah, Thank you so much, Lewis. That was wicked. We'll have to get you to Future Yard in person.
Definitely, yeah. We'll come over and say hello. And we're only an hour away in the car, aren't we? So not far.
We'll sort it out. We'll get it in the diary. Nice one. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. That was really, really great. Really, really useful. And massive thanks to Lewis. And then, yeah, I'll see you all really, really soon for the next one. Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.